Feeling bulletproof today, Craig?
I'm feeling very bulletproof today. Although I don't want to be shot to be tested. I don't want to figure that out.
Well, you look like you're in a very, you look like you have aspens behind you.
Yeah, it's a great new, very realistic green screen I've got.
You do have a great green screen.
I'm actually in the office, just about to jump in and do a periodic exam.
You've had quite the
Look at how realistic it is. I can go into light and not into light. It's pretty crazy.
That must be like the upgraded zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been traveling a lot lately, which is good. I know you do that a lot in the summer, which is how you set up your whole year, is to kind of prepare for that with your kids and your family. And you grind it, and then you go travel. And you've been Aspen, Scotland, and Italy.
Yeah, I've been away quite a bit. And we were talking earlier, Peter. It's kind of like
well, we just did a podcast with Richard from Shared Practices, and we were talking about this a little bit. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's just at a certain point to recognize whether you have a business or not, you have to leave it alone for a while. And just like teaching your kid how to ride a bike, you have to let go of the seat. And oftentimes it's quite scary when what you find, but at a certain point you have to let it go. There's no real litmus test for what you have until you depart it. And I've got great qualified people, and in many ways it does, in some ways better without me. It's nice to be there, but it's also nice to extricate yourself. And I've taken a lot of advice from you, Peter. You've entirely extricated yourself, although you don't physically move out of the state. You could. I mean, when's the last time you were really stepping into the practices and doing things in there? It might have been months. So kudos to you for showing me the 4-minute mile.
Well, I think you're right. Basically, I had to pressure test it and say, like, do I have a job or do I have a business? And I probably went to the extreme and said, like, let me figure out a way to orchestrate myself physically out of that operation, which then, honestly, there's some psychological things that mess you up with that, Craig. And you will experience this, meaning if you get back from being gone, let's say 3 months, and all of a sudden now your practice is doing far better, people are far happier than when you were gone, it kind of is a gut punch a little bit to you, like, as opposed to you should feel proud because you set up the infrastructure and the scaffolding to do that. But there is sometimes like, wait a second, no one really needs me here anymore.
Oh,
I kind of went through that permutation, right? Like my team, quote unquote, doesn't need me. I operate from afar. But it was a little bit of a gut punch because you, as much as you say you shouldn't be the nucleus of all things, sometimes you like to be the nucleus of all things, right? It makes you feel important. Like, who doesn't like to feel important? So I'm just telling you, get prepared that when you're doing better, when you get home, don't take it personally.
Yeah, I wouldn't. That'd be a great outcome, is that things work great without you. I mean, but listen, for me, I get a lot of nourishment, and I love my people, and I love being around them. So I'm looking forward to getting back. It was funny, bittersweet leaving, actually, because I knew I'd be gone for so long. I was really I said, like, I went back in the building like 3 times to say goodbye to people. Like, you said goodbye already, get out of here. But
when you were leaving?
Yeah, it was funny. I didn't really want to, I think there's a saying, it's like, and there were many times in my life where I couldn't do that, or I felt I couldn't do that. And so it's been a long process, actually.
And, as dentists, I think, we talk about this, is that there's a lot of guilt or shame in our profession. I think this is another area it presents itself as like, well, I have to be in the office because people need to me, right? Like it's not, and, and then you never take vacation, especially when you're solo provider. Remember back in the days when you were the only provider, you didn't take vacation. And I always told people, I said this at our last summit, I was like, I didn't take a vacation for 7 or 8 years, mainly because I was riding by myself. And if I took a vacation, it meant that everyone was closed. Everything was closed. It wasn't just that we didn't make money, but it was also the opportunity cost of not making money. Right.
Oh, but you're spending money. So
you're spending, not
vacation.
Making,
you're not telling your hygienist to take a 1-month vacation. So you're spending money on your vacation, and you're spending money keeping your office open without generating revenue. So it's a double cost. It's very important. Yeah, my father said he never went away on a vacation. As you know, he's a dentist. He's like, I was always fearing like the broken temporary or the whatever. And
I think that could causes burnout. I mean, your father loves dentistry and seems to be unburnoutable. But still practicing. But I think that contributes to the narrative of I'm burnt out, I'm too tired of dentistry, is not taking these scheduled breaks. that is necessary for humankind.
Yeah.
Not just
Yeah.
a dentist.
Being in Europe for so long and talking with so many different people there, it's just such a better, in some ways, a better way of life. I know we have a lot more opportunity in America.
Mm-hmm.
We're capitalistic, and we can, go from, son of a shoemaker to a Jeff Bezos or whatever. And there they don't have the access to capital and things like that, but they do have 4 and 6 weeks of paid vacation. And I was interacting with a guy in Copenhagen. He's a medical doctor, he's a cardiologist. And it's such a difference. You're not going to, make the money that we make. But then again, they don't have the mass shootings and the antidepressants and all that stuff that we have. So, I think the balance is somewhere in between, not quite them and not quite us.
I was going to say, I don't think that's the, especially for people who want to hustle and love that flow. Like we were just talking about on the podcast with Richard from Shared Practices, like there are some people who just know who they are. Like they want to hustle. They love swimming like a shark upstream and attacking things. So that would probably, the European model would probably not be good for that. What have you been learning right now? I mean, whenever I say that is whenever I travel, I seem to be able to learn about things that potentially I wouldn't have had structured in, meaning long plane rides, or I'm having a little more time alone, or things like that. So what is on your mind these days?
Well, I think perspective is always really valuable. So I think what you're talking about is just getting away from your daily life and seeing it from afar. I think what I've learned is that I really like my life back home, and you want family time, and I want to be able to be there for my wife and children. But it's also really important for me because my work life fulfills a lot of my needs, my personal needs, that I actually feel less. Potentially less fulfilled and less complete without my work life, which is interesting. I think that
it fulfills you. That doesn't
Yeah.
sound,
but there's a little bit of guilt in that. Like, does that mean I don't, like,
does that mean you don't love you?
Being with my wife and my children 24 hours a day for weeks on end, it's like, okay, there needs to be some separation here. And I think what I've learned, and I've been talking about this a lot recently, is a lot of people are struggling with this work-life balance. Or like, maybe you're a female dentist and you're struggling. Am I a mom, or am I a mompreneur? Am I a dentist? What role do I have? And I think it's really important to collapse all of your identities and realize you're being a great mother or a great father by being a productive member of society. You don't have to just be there for every single baseball game and sit and dote on your children. You can actually be a great father by being a great role model. So, in between the break of going to Europe and now in Aspen, there was a week and a half of work, and my daughter came in to work with me and was doing, some sterilization and shredding documents and stuff like that, minimum wage type stuff. But it was really good for her, and our relationship really improved when she saw my work identity. She had a whole nother level of respect for me. So it was really, really interesting. It was a neat exercise. So, but I'm not, if anything, I'm just missing my life a bit, which is what I want. I think you should go away to have appreciation for your life.
Yeah. If you don't have a context, right, then how do you know? And so that is great. I think I think that speaks volumes, and that's what you want to do. Like, you don't want to have to take a vacation from your life, to quote unquote, a vacation from your life, because, that's the one constant.
It does take a little bit of time, though. Just some advice that I would like to tell you as well. It's like the first week, it's like, relaxation, or if you have a 1 week vacation, you're enjoying yourself, but you're also focused on the impending return date in 4 or 3 days. So at 2 weeks, it's a long time. At 3 weeks, you're like, what is my purpose here?
Yeah.
Like, what am I actually doing? Like, this is not normal. And so I took a 3-week vacation. I think my first one was maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And I remember going to morning huddle the day I got back, like, thank God I've got you guys. Thank God I've got something to come back to. Because like, you start to feel it's an interesting feeling.
So I'm going to take a hard pivot, but I think the exercise that you just said, I always recommend when someone tells me, like, I'm going to go sell my practice and sit on the beach, and like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to do the Corona and sit there and blah, blah, blah. And so I say, look, before you decide to do this, you do whatever you want to do. It's your business, your practice, do whatever you want to do. But before you do that, have you ever taken a vacation longer than a week? Typically the answer is no. Okay, so I encourage you, take a month off before you make this draconian move of selling your practice. I encourage you, go try this out for size. Grab a case of Coronas, get your beach chair, and do it for a month on end. Because a week, it'll feel great. 2 weeks, it starts to feel like, 3 weeks, you may start getting bored. 4 weeks, you may say, I miss what I just sold. Right?
There must be something about the human brain, Peter. I think we the way our brains work and the decision process, that we start the machine of our brain working towards a decision, and then we blind ourselves to the other thing we just left. And now it's like effort justification, where we're constantly reinforcing our own internal monologue, and we go so far. So like everything in life is micro adjustments. There's 2 or 3 millimeter shifts on a daily. And the problem is, in your own mind, by the time you process, you are like 15 miles from where you're supposed to be. And then it's almost like you're just a ping pong ball bouncing back and forth, only to or that ball that swings back and forth just to settle back.
The micro corrections is, I think you nailed it, right? Like these big swinging movements where it's, I own 100% and now I own 0%, right? It's like, whoa, why didn't you just look for something where you had to invest? Like there could have been a micro movement in there. But I agree. I see this in dentistry a lot. I think I've been guilty of it myself from time to time, just thinking about that process. What else have you been kind of,
there's my wife. Say hi to everybody.
There she is.
She's a hiking machine. I have a good talent that's like, I can really kind of disengage from everything. For better or for worse, because I know that when I get back, I'll just pick up all the pieces. So everything's kind of on hold for me, as far as business wise. I've got 2 new doctors that started this past week, which I've never brought in a new doctor to start when I wasn't there. So it's a very interesting process to have that level of delegation. But I built the team that I want to have, and I'm excited about just coming back and seeing how it all fell into place.
I'm going to read an interesting email that we got, and I'm not going to mention names, but it was funny. You and I got this email, and we love feedback from people, and 99% of the time, Greg, it is good emails. Like, thank God you saved this, you did this. I just want to thank you for the content you put out. 99% of the time. This one was a little bit more of, I didn't really understand what it was, but I want to read it because I like to step in front of things like that. Okay. You think that's a good idea?
Please go for it. Listening.
Okay. All right. So the message goes, hey, you two have been recently broadcasting about your investment acumen. Peter, in a recent podcast, Craig asked you how we get out of a bond inverted curve. You had no answer. What do we need to do to reverse this? This talking point about the inverted curve has been talked about from many, and many just parrot this and don't tell us what our economy has to do to reverse this. Please talk about the solution on the next podcast. You two are very good, but recently you have gotten off your original charge, and in my opinion, are floundering a bit, beating your chest like a gorilla.
Oh God, I didn't know you were going to read this. Yeah, listen, man.
If a dentist spent 20 plus years in our profession, one can be very successful as you've become. Bring it down to a more humble discussion. Craig, let your guest talk instead of telling us about each of you in the podcast. You're great.
But Peter, why do we have to talk? I don't care. Hey, listen, there's a really easy thing to do, whoever this is. It's a button on the upper left or right side of your screen. Unsubscribe. It's fine. Okay. No, okay. Because listen, Peter, I'm just telling you, if you knew the answer to how to reverse the economy, holy hell. All we're saying, and we've been saying this for a really long time, and many have listened, is there's a darker, a slower growth period coming. So
this was my segue. This was, look, you nailed it. I didn't really want to talk about the email, even though I thought it was interesting, because I was thinking the same thing. If I had the answers, you think I would have a podcast, and I would be the world's most foremost economic, it was a segue into, since you've been gone, Craig, not that we're going to beat our chests like gorillas, but there has been another negative GDP print, which means technically we are now in the recession that you and I have been talking about forever. Right. And it's not us talking about our financial acumen. It's just get ready just in case. And so I was asking you questions about what have you been learning about And as you know, like I'm kind of like a pseudo macroeconomist. I like it. And I think that's driven from the fact that it affects crypto so heavily. And that's gotten me interested in it. So I've been following Patrick Bet-David a lot, who I know he's your patient, and he's been on our podcast, even though I blew it. See, there's some humility right there. I blew it.
You didn't blow it. You're the one who got him on the damn podcast, brother.
Right. And that was before he was your patient, right? Long before. You're like, who is this BBD? I was like, dude, he's badass. I saw him at the Breakers. He's he's blowing up like as kind of a different, I'd say he's blowing up, not competing with like the likes of Tony Robbins, but I think he just has great interviews. Like he interviewed Kobe, and like he just has all these amazing interviews.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's a brilliant man. Humble and brilliant.
Humble, and comes from, is not American born. So he really appreciates the opportunities in America. Anyway, so where I'm going with this, Greg, is that I have been learning about, kind of other people's takes on what to do. Because to this point of this email, like, that's great. Beat your chest and tell us it's coming, but give some action items. Give like some things that you can do to circumvent this. And so I watched this. I subscribed to watch a market webinar that Patrick Bet-David, or PDB, PBD put out. PDB is my initials, actually, so that I get
and P Diddy is Sean Puffy.
No, PBD, Peter Dawson Boulden, or Patrick. So I get those initials because everyone calls him Peter,
sure there's a
Patrick Bet-David. And so I listened to the whole thing, and it was like, what are the steps to do in a market crash? And so I think that's where Patrick Bet-David shines, is that he gives, instead of saying like, kumbaya, hold your hands, he's like, do these things, learn this, go about this, go talk to this person. Like, he gives you actionable things to go do. And what I thought was very interesting about this is, as it related to Bulletproof, there were some things kind of that is related to dentistry, right? There's going to be a market crash, but you need to monetize your fear. It's good. Sometimes market crashes are good because they over leverage the people who have been over leveraged in the market. They get washed out. But one of the things he spoke about was like, get in a group, get in a community that supports you, because anyone can make money in a bull market. And I'm going back to now dentistry. So I encourage people, as if we talked about this, I think, Craig, my parting words to this past mastermind class was like, look, if you're leaving and not continuing on to a second year, which many people were, I said, here's what you want to do. Find a group where you can continue to have discussions, where you stay accountable, where you feel safe. Because if you look back, remember the first one we talked about, Craig, when we had the COVID crisis hit, and my God, like that was the value of having the group, was being able to say, like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm going to get in a group and we're all going to talk about this. I almost think you need a group when times potentially get tough, when the winter is coming, when the COVID has come.
Oh, for sure, man. Right? For sure. Well, look at the last podcast we had.
You actually don't need it in the bull market, but
right.
So I thought that was really great that Patrick was saying, like, find yourself in a group of like-minded people who want what you want, who want success for you. And I don't know. I just thought it was.
Let me just go back to the. Now you got me thinking about that guy who had the interesting remarks for what I said. But let's go back to the last podcast, because the last time you and I had a more in-depth conversation, the canary in the coal mine. It was the dental intel guys. The bottom 15% got worse during COVID, significantly worse, and the top 15% expanded. So it's your psychology, it's the people in the room that predicate your future, and there's no better, time than when a bull market's bear market's coming and winter's coming. There are creative ways to do this. That market share that's going to be lost by the bottom performers will flow to somebody. And it's going to flow to the top level people. But as far as like, when September came around and everybody said inflation's going to be transitory, and it was literally almost a year ago. And they're like, this is not really going to happen. This is just transitory. It's supply chain. Inflation's not really happening. They're still denying it today. We were saying the same thing in September. And had you, for those in the mastermind who refinanced their buildings 2.5%, 3%, I mean, that is an unbelievable move. We did.
Remember, we told everyone to do that. Yeah, we went through the process. We like, refi now because it's cheap money. And if you had done it, you saved hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of your loan. And so many people didn't even know. It was interesting. They didn't really even know what their rate was.
But also, there's still a good time now, Peter. I think that even though when you say, "Oh my God, interest rates are at 6%, 7%," there's still for businesses. I don't know about buying your dream house right now, but historically, these are still low interest rates. They're going to get worse. It's going to get higher. Inflation's not going to be curbed that quickly, in my opinion.
Maybe. There is a new Inflation Reduction Act, Craig.
Yeah, it includes like sending money overseas. I know that.
Yeah, well, here it is right
More
here.
printing press.
You can see how I've got it. I've got the highlights here that it talks about. It's a $739 billion act, and it's interesting how it talks about. It has nothing to do with inflation, quite honestly. It's a deficit reduction to fight inflation, which the inflation hasn't been caused from our deficit.
Right, but it's been caused by
printing of new.
Right. So we're going to print more money, right? No, we're not spending it. We're printing more money in order to relieve inflation, which will work out marvelously.
Yeah, it's going to work out great. It's going to work out great. Are you?
If you want to see a good example of how government works, go to the DMV and change your address or get a new license. That's going to be how this Inflation Reduction Act is going to work. Unfortunately,
I'm going to come back to. I've got this slide up, and hopefully you can see it. Where I'm showing you these 10 steps that Patrick Bet-David talk about, and it's titled "Make Millions During a Market Crash." And market crash, he's talking about a recession, and so he had hundreds of thousands of people sign in for this kind of webinar. But he actually gave here's the 10 things. So this is like the last few minutes of the presentation, and so I showed with you number 4 where it says strength in numbers. But I think these are all really good tactics or things to think about as it relates to your practice, right? So would you allow me, if someone's listening to this, would you allow me to kind of walk through these real quick? I won't explain them, but I want to at least list them so people have context. Number 1 is monetize fear. Number 2 is the lazy, the arrogant, and the over-leveraged will be filtered out. Number 3, become bankable. Number 4, strengthen numbers. Number 5, create a cause your company can rally behind. Number 6, cut the fat. Number 7, find your running mates, which relates pretty much back to number 4, in my opinion, Craig. Number 8 is double down on positive distractions. And number 9 is equip your team with all possible audibles. And then 10, which you can't see on the screen, is increase your level of urgency, meaning you need to act now, is what he was saying. Do you see any of those that are jumping out at you, Craig, in terms of anything to relate back to the business of our practices?
Well, I see it all as just psychology. So I was around just like you were during the economic downturn of 2008, and the psychology and how people believed how bad it was going to be and made moves in preparation for a downturn. Mm-hmm. And I've seen other people that didn't listen to the news and expanded. I mean, I was really proud. And from 2008 to 9 and 10, those were years I was growing 45 and 70% per year. There were things that I did, like, take over, buy another practice's records during that time. It's easy right now. And I think people have been lured into this false sense of entrepreneurial skills because they've expanded so aggressively over the last 3 and 5 and 7 years. So when the playing field is favorable like it is, everybody gets a false sense of their abilities. So there is a little bit of like, hey, if you haven't been doing really well of these 3 to 5 years, you have to pay even more attention. And if you have been doing really well these last 3 to 5 years, it's not because you're so great. And I at one point felt like I was, the Jeff Bezos of dentistry, only getting my ass handed to me.
Oh, yeah. It's that everyone, it goes back to that, people think they are geniuses in bull market. I mean, in the past 10 years, actually the past 13 years, you could have thrown a dart at the stock market, picked a stock.
14 years, Peter. 2008, we've had economic expansion for 14 years. We skipped 2 downturns that we should have had. We should have had recessions are important. Downturns are important. It always happens. We're just
it's a cleansing. It's a cleansing process. But a lot of times people there, I actually know several people who made a lot of their wealth in 2009, right? People get scared. They drop things. And so other people
that's what's going to happen now.
Pick things up.
That's what's going to happen now. I think more dentists and more business people are going to go and become millionaires or drive
Yeah.
their worth up by tens of millions over the next 3 years than over the last 5. And it's going to be a big shakeout. You'll see who was real and who wasn't.
Like we talked about at Summit, Greg, I think that the messages or the narrative that you hear around you dictates your actions in your life. Meaning people who listen to, I'm not going to get into politics, but say Fox News versus MSNBC. I'm saying like the groups that you listen to will dictate a lot of your actions. So surround yourself with people who are saying, I can't wait. Look at all this opportunity versus woe is me. What's going to happen? Like I'm going to add another zero to my net worth kind of people in this downturn versus the people who say, holy shit, we're going to get wiped out and this is going to be terrible. Run and cover.
That's been like one of the big secrets to yours and my individual success is being in the right circles, Peter. It's always about being in the right circles. If you're in the wrong circle with anything, if you have, friends that are, unhealthy and fighting with their spouses, it's going to be hard on you as well. There's peer pressure adds a lot to this. So, the people that you choose to hang out with is super important.
It really is. It really is. I'm leaving this slide up just because I think it's especially people looking at this on YouTube can kind of sees kind of the steps of what I had to go through the 2-hour presentation to get to, which still good. It was still good listening to PBD talk, I should say. Yeah, that's good, bud. That's good. So,
I think I just want to leave a couple tactical things for people as we go through this.
Greg's going tactical.
Yeah, I must not be feeling well. It must be the altitude out here. So one of the things to think about is sending letters out to the people in your communities. If you belong to a study club, if you have friends in your community that are dentists, colleagues, you can actually send a letter, take them to lunch, check in with them, because there might be people who are really worried about what's going to happen. And if they're so worried and they're not making that 3 millimeter shift and they're going 15 miles, I got to sell everything. Obviously encourage them and try to be a resource for them to stay put in their position and weather the storm. But if they're not and they really want to create some action, there's possibilities to merge practices into your practice or combine. If you think about building a new location and you might be taking off more than you can chew, there's a possibility to bring other people in that might be being scared. There's a lot of things that can be
that's
done.
A very abundant mentality with local study clubs. And here's why I get scared about local study clubs. They're great for learning and being exposed to things, but lots of times as dentists, we're just humans. It's a zero-sum game, meaning that if you're doing really well, that means that I have to be doing bad because I'm in the same community as you. So you operate from a very abundant mentality, Craig, and you're saying, hey, check in on people and learn, and maybe there's some merger opportunities and there's some things. But a lot of times, and I know people are shaking their head as listening to it, that study clubs are maybe they on the offset, it's like, hey, let's come together and all learn. But really, in the back end, it's like, I really want to do better than you, kind of thing. Because you're in my town.
I don't. So case in point, I had this dentist. Her name is Orly. Really, I've known her forever. She's just left her job. Wasn't philosophically going the right way. They split up, and I'm putting her together with my competition. So there's a guy in my town that I know is nearing retirement age. Awesome provider, fee for service practice, $1.8 million a year. I'm like, call him up. She said, well, what am I gonna say? I'm like, I'll call him for you, because I just think if we can help each other. And maybe it's just my delusion or I live in some alternate universe, but I want to see them kick butt. And if I create a good relationship between those two, it may just be great for them, or maybe it can come back to me, but just trying to elevate dentistry. And that's the spirit of that type of conversation.
Even in your own town, you're saying?
Even in my own town. So Dr.
That's rare, Craig.
But I'm doing that. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And they're probably 3 miles away from me. Yeah. So if the spirit of the letter is like, hey, during these challenging and uncertain times, or this not letter, but conversation, we all know a winter's coming. I want to be a resource, if you guys want to get together and strategize. It could just be that. It's like not, hey, Dr. Jones, want to hang it up and call it quits? Well, I'll take you over and cannibalize your business. It's like, why not create something where like we can get together and have weekly, monthly get-togethers, and that could raise it. Then you'll start seeing who's in your tribe and who's not. Coming full circle. You can't have, if someone really disagrees with you, that's a good thing, because that means you stand for something. You have to have outsiders to have insiders, and meeting with those people and having philosophical discussions about their business will show you who your tribe is. I know instantly when I'm in the wrong group. I just have to get out. There's no more feeling of being alone when you're in the wrong company. It's better to be alone with yourself than being with a bunch of people who make you feel like you're alone.
I had to process that for a second. It's better to be alone yourself than it is to be with people who make you feel alone.
Right. Because when
Did I
you're
get that
with,
right?
I don't remember. I forgot what I said. But if you're with 7 people who are like talking about how bad things are, you really feel like
it makes you feel worse. I see. What you're
you're like, where am I?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it makes you feel super alone. And it's so I just think there's unique opportunities. And
to loop this back in, the reason I went down this pathway, Craig, was reading that email and then getting to Patrick Bet-David is I think that it's going to go back into your wheelhouse of your vision, meaning the interest rates should not define if you're wanting to expand or you're wanting to do something or you're wanting to build a new office or you're wanting to do whatever, an interest rate shouldn't define your plan.
Of course
right?
not.
But you say this, of course not. But many people, myself included, have looked at me like, maybe I'll pause until I figure out what's going on. But if your pull is so strong, then the interest rates don't matter. And like you said, contextually, we've had interest rates as high as 20%. And
by the way, tax rates for the upper bracket as high as 90%.
Right.
That was news to me. I didn't know that during Carter, the top tax rate over 400,000 had a 90% rate.
Yeah, so we've been sloshing around in good times of like free money for so long that that 5% seems aggressive. I'm going to pause. I'm going to pause.
Right, but look at how many things are working against you. If you enjoy or watch a full YouTube video about winners coming, the YouTube algorithm will give you more winners coming. You better you crawl in a hole and die. So it's not even your friend circle. It's the algorithms and the bots that are actually going to feed you more of the narrative you watched. So in your YouTube feed looks very different from Peter's for those that are listening. And I also just want to circle back to the comments that are made. Listen, this podcast is designed to help. And, when you go out in front, whether you're a podcaster or you're leading a team, you're going to get arrows in your back. And you just have to take those arrows and keep moving forward. If I listened to every negative comment, whether it's from someone that loves me or someone that doesn't love me, I would do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing. And the challenge to the people that are listening is you have to provide value and you have to believe in the value you're doing, no matter what feedback you get. Howard Schultz was shit on for so long, but he persisted. He created Starbucks. I'm not trying to compare Peter or myself to Starbucks because, we're not here to take over the world of dentistry, but we're here to add value. And, I just those types of comments do not bother me whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. I think they probably bother me more just because I get hypersensitive. But I think it's a good point to just say is like, look, you and I came together not because we thought we had it all figured out. There are some things that we've gotten our ass kicked on. We're like, hey, this works and this doesn't, and let's share that. But we are not there's so many permutations of how you could be an entrepreneurial, growth-minded dentist that we don't have all the answers for it. We talk about our experiences. We talk about things that we can do in the context of things that have worked or haven't worked for us. And that's it, full stop. It is not the Bible.
History will prove it right.
Right, right or wrong.
So when we were saying, it's fine. It is what it is. I just think that the most important thing is while the narrative is dark, if you believe in what you're doing, there's no better time to do it than now. Yeah, I think waiting for that right inch. I think there's things about the housing. Like if you love this house and, I would be cautious to invest in a house right now, potentially in certain markets.
Unless you're going to live in it forever, who cares, right? Because you just wait until you get refinanced. I actually posted that on.
Yes, it's really the same anyway, right? Because you pay more and you have a higher, or you pay less and have a higher interest rate, or pay more and have a lower interest rate. It's always the same.
I posted this on our Mighty Networks, right? I was saying, isn't this interesting? Yes, we're dissuaded from the fact that there are higher interest rates, but guess what? I can go and I can lock in 30-year money at, let's say when interest rates were good, let's call it 2.5%. I can lock it in.
Well, they're good now though, still.
And okay. Well, all right. So just bear with me for a second. It's a rigged game in our favor. Here's where I'm going with this. I was saying, it's interesting that like I can lock it in and I can say, I want a 30-year mortgage bank. And as long as I keep making payments and do that, I am locked in at that amount. But for me, the bank doesn't have that same reciprocity, meaning that as soon as interest rates, let's say I was at 7%. The bank doesn't get to lock me in for 30 years at 7%. As soon as interest rates are good, I can refinance and change the arrangement of that thing, right? So it's not a fair game, meaning I can lock in cheap money for 30 years, but they can't lock in expensive, quote unquote, expensive money on my end for 30 years. I can refinance. So it's a rigged game, and it's just saying in our favor a little bit.
Well,
so
don't
let it be an impediment. Don't let it be an impediment to your going back to the mission, the growth, the vision. If that's the plan, don't let temporary interest rates, if they are temporary, be an impediment to your plan. Because as soon as they go back into your favor, you can refinance. That's a good gig. That's a good gig to be in.
That's understanding business, because when you understand business, everything's in your favor, including the tax code. It's a 6,000 page document that, the first 20, 30 pages tell you how to pay your taxes, and the rest how to take advantage of the loopholes, or incentives as they're really known. So business acumen, and if you're surrounded by it, you realize how to make the system work for your advantage. The government actually does not need your money. They need your innovation. They need your buying. They need your hiring. That's what it's really about. So I think that the same thing that goes. It's this. Unfortunately, we live in a time where financial illiteracy is so extremely high. I know we're working with dentists who have like literally 4 and 7 years of postgraduate education, and they know nothing about this stuff, and it's really unfortunate. So if we could advance the needle just by opening the conversation, that's I think a good thing.
Yeah, I'm. I guess we'll wrap it here because I know I need to go on a hike and live your best life out there in Aspen. But I want to say that I'm a little bummed. Our mastermind came to a close, but at the same time, I'm really excited because we're having a new one starting in September, and we get to go through, now the new stuff, the pathway again, but now with new context and more information and more people on board, and
some three-peaters, by the way, three-peats,
right?
So first attendees of the first one, attendees of the second one, and now attendees of the third one, which is cool.
And I know that we have left it. At first, we left we had some impediments to people joining by an application process, and it was really just to make sure it's a good fit that we could provide what someone was looking for. But it actually is still open because we found some interesting things in that process. And honestly, we didn't get the chance to talk about it that much at Summit, Craig. So if you are at all interested in getting in a group, I think it's important. I think it'll be more important than ever. If you're interested in getting in a group, check it out at bulletproofmastermind.com. It's going to be open. I believe we're starting September 1 is the, or maybe September 8th is going to be our first.
So basically a little over a month to enroll.
Yeah.
And for those that are thinking they have it all figured out, but want to jumpstart their team, we've had masterminders in the past just say, I've joined because of the office manager and hygiene benefits, and they've reaped massive benefit.
I know Tish did that a lot, to speak of that. And I think he's joining again for that same, and he didn't join calls, and there was no shame in that, but he did it for the benefit of his hygienist and office manager. He's like, dude, I'm getting so much value, like by proxy from what they are learning, right? It's amazing.
You want to know the biggest kick in the groin too, Peter? You can have all the answers, but you have a third party come in and say the exact same thing you would say half the time, and people actually take it. It's just so funny.
Sounds like my wife. Sounds like my wife.
Exactly. Exactly. But it's valuable. Awesome. It's valuable to have a hygienist tell you how to master your schedule. It's different from a consultant that's not a hygienist, or someone that's actually walking the talk is huge. Or an office manager is actually practicing in office management with Erica.
All right, buddy. Well, go enjoy your day. What time is it out there?
It is 1:40
PM. Enough for you to go out and get your ass kicked with your wife, who can
she's already done.
Hike you by 100 miles probably.
Oh yeah, no joke. She's a machine.
That's awesome.
She's a machine. I think I must stress her out, and that's why she takes all that physical exercise to release. It works for her.
Well, all right, buddy. We'll chat. We'll chat later. Enjoy it. And for those of you listening, we'll see you next time on the Bulletproof Dental Practice Pod. Oh, and don't forget to contribute to the conversation on bulletproof.dental. If you haven't joined our mighty network, it's really awesome. Like some of the things I was actually even talking about were some comments. Actually, what I did post, Craig, I posted a question, which I want to do next podcast with us. It's talking about things that you should and should not say in dentistry as it relates to things you say in front of a patient, as it relates to like magic verbiage and enrollment. I think there's just some great terms that we need to get rid of. There's some great terms that you should use instead of X. You should say this in dentistry. And I think your I don't know, the culture will increase, the enrollment will increase, people will not be scared. It'll make the experience better, you
For
know?
sure. I mean, words define the experience.
Yes, yes.
For
So
sure.
I've been getting a lot of good feedback from that question about things to say, like, Mrs. Jones, you need a gross debridement. Like, how many of us doctors have ever
No,
said that
you're
in
saying
front
I'm
of a patient?
gross.
And 1000%, Craig, like that's just
Yeah.
a little example, but 1000%. The patient doesn't question, did you just say I'm gross? But all they heard was gross. And like, this practice stinks. They just
Hey,
call
by
me
the way,
gross.
I want to add something to that podcast if you don't mind. It's about self-talk as well, because it's the words you choose in your practice and the words you choose to talk about yourself.
Well, that may
You
be a
know,
long pod then, but
no, it's simple, but I
maybe
like,
it's part one and part two. Maybe it's part
yeah,
one of the external and part two in the internal.
yeah, yeah.
All right,
Okay.
everybody.